Welcome to the Deep Dive. We've gone through all the sources and notes you've sent us, and today we are pulling out the absolute core insights from a true American original, John Morgan, the founder of Morgan & Morgan.
Yeah, and this isn't just about the giant billboards, though. I mean, that's definitely part of the story.
Oh, for sure.
But this is a much deeper look at an empire, a whole legal enterprise built on some really deep personal pain. And it's powered by this relentless patience. And his politics are, well, they're pragmatic, if not just completely contradictory.
The scale is what gets me. We're talking about a firm with over 1,000 attorneys, 3,000 employees, and an advertising budget that's on track to hit $500 million this year.
$500 million.
Just to get one message out there, everywhere for everyone.
And that reach, it's not just geographic, it's political. You look at the sources, and his public endorsements are they're staggering. He was for Obama, for Biden, for Hillary Clinton.
All right.
And then he pivots just recently and publicly supports Donald Trump. I mean, for someone that successful, it's like a masterclass in using influence, adapting to whatever political current gives you the most leverage.
Absolutely. But before we get into the mechanics of the wealth or the politics, we have to start at the real beginning, the genesis of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Because what fueled this entire empire wasn't some Ivy League business plan.
Yeah.
It was a single devastating personal tragedy. Let's break that down.
That tragedy, it happened when Morgan was just 19 years old, a college sophomore. His older brother, Tim, was working as a lifeguard at Walt Disney World.
And there was an accident.
A terrible accident. It left him a quadriplegic.
And that's the moment. That's when everything changed. Morgan talks about his reaction to that time in very specific terms. He felt poor, helpless, hopeless, and powerless.
But that feeling, that helplessness, it didn't last. It morphed into something totally different. He says it turned into being enraged.
Enraged.
Yes, enraged by the situation, sure, but specifically by how the corporation, Disney in this case, handled his family after the accident. That trauma, it just immediately defined his whole career path.
He knew exactly what he was going to do.
Exactly. He said his mission was to protect people like my brother Tim against the corporations like Disney.
So that powerlessness, that early wound, that becomes the jet fuel for the entire operation. And the story of Tim's legacy is, I think, really moving. A doctor told the family he probably wouldn't live past 30.
And he lived to be 65.
65.
He did. And Tim worked inside the firm every single day. That is such a crucial piece of this. That injury wasn't some story from the past. It was a daily, physical reminder. Morgan calls it the most devastating thing that ever happened, and it just cemented that emotion right into the firm's foundation.
It's also kind of funny when you think about his origins. Before all this, before law school, what was he doing? He was a magician at Walt Disney World.
Right. Performing magic tricks. It shows you he had this, this innate skill for showmanship, for connecting with people, which obviously paid off later when he's running a multi-million-dollar ad campaign.
That showmanship, that performance DNA, it's the perfect bridge to his whole philosophy of success. Because the core belief of his business model is that this drive, this thing he calls hungry, you can't teach it.
You can't. He argues there's a genetic entrepreneurial seed. He always brings up his paperboy theory.
The paperboy theory.
Yeah, he points to people like Warren Buffett, Oprah Winfrey, even Walt Disney. They were all paper delivery kids.
And his point isn't about the newspaper.
No, not at all. It's about the discipline. He really emphasizes that they had to deliver every day in the snow, in the sleet, in the cold. It was that mandatory, non-negotiable grind. That's what builds the resilience. That's the hustle.
Which leads right into the title of his book idea. You can't teach hungry.
Exactly. That drive, it comes directly from those early experiences of feeling helpless or powerless, the kind of experiences that, the wealthy often shield their kids from.
And this is where he really pushes back against the whole modern idea of instant wealth, the VC-funded, get-rich-quick culture. Morgan says patience is the real billionaire skill.
And you can see it in his own financial history. He didn't make his first $1 million until 1997.
He was 41 years old. For someone running a huge law firm, that sounds incredibly late. Why did it take so long?
Because he was doing it on purpose. He was deliberately keeping the firm in a state of growth. He was pouring every single dollar on profit right back into expansion.
New cities, new states.
All 50 states eventually. Right. So he was asset rich, he was influence rich, but he was actively choosing not to be cash rich.
But wasn't that an incredibly risky strategy? I mean, a firm that relies so much on advertising. That kind of expansion must have put insane pressure on the cash flow.
It did. But he sees chasing that illusion of quick money, the rented Lamborghinis and penthouses, as a short game. The real skill is patience. It's letting that growth compound for decades until you hit what he calls the Rubicon.
Ah, crossing the Rubicon. Okay, explain that concept.
It's his whole model for business growth. For years, you're investing heavily, constantly in marketing. You operate in what he calls advertise red.
So you're running at a loss.
A constant calculated loss, all for market share. You're just feeding the beast, growing the brand everywhere, using a ton of leverage.
And then what happens when you finally cross that Rubicon?
The business flips. The brand recognition, the market saturation, it all hits a critical mass, and that investment curve just inverts. It goes from loss to exponential profit. He describes it as looking like a hockey stick.
Wow.
The firm is now projecting $2.5 billion in fees, mostly from that expansion. He's convinced the expansion business is about to get bigger than his original Florida business. That's patience paying off.
That kind of deep, long-term thinking. And it's all combined with that underlying trauma. It gives him a really unique perspective on protecting wealth for the next generation, which is where we should go next.
Oh, yeah. He has some notoriously strict rules for his 4 kids, all designed to protect that wealth from getting, diluted.
And it all centers on one thing.
Yeah.
Marital protection. He has an absolute ironclad policy.
Yeah.
If you don't have a prenup, you don't take under the will.
That's it. No exceptions. And he says he intentionally took on the role of the bad guy in the family so his kids wouldn't have to have that fight with their future spouses.
He's also been incredibly smart about tax planning. He talked about this brilliant strategy he used with his software company, Litify.
Okay, so he gifted 20% of the company to each of his kids. Later, when Litify was sold at a $600 million valuation, he structured the deal so that his own remaining 20% share was used specifically to toggle off and pay the taxes.
For the entire sale.
The entire sale, which means his kids got their share of the money almost entirely tax-free.
That's some next-level planning.
It is. But ironically, his biggest fear isn't the IRS or a divorce, it's Generation 3, the grandkids.
The G3 problem.
He's terrified they're going to lose that hunger that created all the wealth in the first place.
It's the classic shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations problem.
Yeah.
He says the money often goes to hell in a handbasket by G3 because they're just too used to luxury.
Yeah, he points out that his grandkids are already flying around on the G500, which, for anyone listening, is a very, very nice private jet. They just haven't known the struggle.
And that worry is shaping his entire estate plan.
It is. Instead of leaving the bulk of his money to his kids, who are already wealthy, he's planning to put his remaining estate into a foundation. He's aiming for $1 billion.
And he's enforcing this tough love from beyond the grave.
Yeah.
His rule is if his kids already have $100 million, they get nothing more from the main estate. He's making sure that drive doesn't get watered down by complacency.
That intense focus on control and leverage is the perfect way to pivot into his political network, which is just... it's extensive and full of surprises.
Let's start with Bill Clinton. They've been friends for a long time.
Oh.
Morgan tells this amazing story about a 5-hour dinner where Clinton, even now, says he could still be president.
Yeah, but he'd have to pace himself differently. And Morgan asked him, what was the secret?
And what did he say?
Pure personal connection. Clinton's skill, Morgan says, is treating every single person like they're the only one in the room, like there's an election tomorrow and you're running and they're voting.
One at a time.
The art of connection, one at a time.
And in that same conversation, Morgan asked him about the Jeffrey Epstein situation.
He did, and he confirms Clinton specifically denied ever being on the island, but he did admit to being on the planes.
Morgan also confirmed seeing that infamous painting of Clinton in a blue dress.
Right there inside Epstein's New York suite.
Yeah. So moving to today's politics, Morgan was an early supporter of Joe Biden. He saw him as this compassionate centrist, but he's been really disappointed with how it all turned out.
He feels that Biden was almost immediately walled off by his staff. He names Ron Klain and Anita Dunn specifically. He says they took over and isolated him.
And in Morgan's view, that staff control led to some major political blunders.
The big one he cites is the nomination of Kamala Harris. Morgan thought that was just disastrous. He viewed it as Joe Biden basically saying, and this is a quote, "F you to the Democratic Party." He felt that choice doomed the election right from the start.
It's that deep dissatisfaction that led to his political reset, as he calls it.
Right. He now identifies as a conservative capitalist. He says he left the Democratic Party because he sees it leaning towards socialism, and he views the rise of Trump as a necessary correction against the country going so far left.
He points to things like woke, defund the police, and reverse discrimination as the specific issues that pushed him away. It's a fascinating look at how personal ideology and financial interests can force someone to be so politically fluid.
And nowhere is that fight between money and politics sharper than in his home state of Florida, where he's been in a huge public battle with Governor Ron DeSantis over tort law.
Okay, the details here are just astonishing. We need to slow down a bit so everyone can really grasp this. Morgan highlights this shocking law in Florida called the free kill law.
It's a truly unique law, and not in a good way. Florida is the only state in the country where if a doctor's malpractice kills someone and that person doesn't have a spouse or adult children over 25.
Wait, say that again? No spouse or kids over 25?
And the rest of the family, the parents, younger kids, siblings, they have no right to sue.
No right to sue for wrongful death. The family can't get any justice or compensation. That's a massive shield for doctors and insurance companies.
It's incredible. And what's crazier is that the Republican-controlled Florida House and Senate actually voted to repeal this horrible law.
But DeSantis vetoed it.
DeSantis vetoed the repeal. And Morgan claims it's because of huge campaign donations from the insurance and doctor lobbies. The sources cite numbers anywhere from $3.9 million up to almost $10 million.
It just reinforces his whole worldview. Political power comes down to money and leverage.
And that theme of leverage, it extends to these huge scandals, too. Morgan completely agrees with the financier Howard Lutnick's theory that Jeffrey Epstein was, first and foremost, a blackmailer.
His argument is that the $170 million fee that Leon Black, the former CEO of Apollo, paid Epstein, it only makes sense if Black was paying to solve the problem.
It wasn't a consulting fee. It was a ransom payment to get rid of whatever leverage pictures, videos Epstein had on him.
And in his view, Ghislaine Maxwell was the engine of that whole operation.
Absolutely. The madam, the recruiter, and now the deep throat of the Epstein saga.
Yeah.
She's the one who still holds all the secrets that can be used as leverage.
Which brings us to one last, just truly bizarre detail that Morgan shared. It really crystallizes how control and leverage work in even the most private relationships.
The Bill Gates prenup.
Oh my gosh.
So Morgan shared this detail that Gates supposedly had a clause in his prenup that allowed him 1 week every year in perpetuity with his ex-girlfriend.
At her beach cottage for technology and life discussions.
It's just the ultimate expression of needing to maintain control over access, even within a marriage. You can see how that desire for control, a thread that goes all the way back to his brother's accident, drives every single decision he makes.
So after all this, what's the key takeaway for you, the listener? I think it's that intertwined relationship between building extreme wealth and using leverage. Morgan's entire life, from advocating for injury victims to playing politics at the highest level, it shows that patience and influence are just two sides of the same coin.
His success is completely rooted in that early, painful experience. It gave him a drive that you just can't manufacture. The hungry can't be taught.
Which brings us back to that question about the next generation. If that kind of ultimate success, that hungry trait, requires some kind of childhood trauma or deep financial struggle, well, how do you create an environment for G3 that instills that drive without the devastating pain?
That is the challenge, isn't it? That's the G3 paradox.
It is. Though on a lighter note, he did have one piece of relationship advice for young men looking for a wife.
Right. He just said, get up, get out, get busy. He's all about networking, staying active, and not being a passive beta boy.
And the statistic he shared to back it up is so pragmatic, so very John Morgan.
It really is. He pointed out that the divorce rate drops to just 4% for people who get married after the age of 30. His thinking is there's real value in getting life experience out of your system before you commit.
A truly pragmatic thought from a man whose entire life has been defined by the pursuit of leverage and patience. Until next time, keep digging deeper.